he's the biggest L because you got to do like 4 of these, and if you've ever tried to use Aaron in combat, he's a statue, man. Like it is not worth. And then doing all the rage just to get this unit. I'll get into it. I'll get into it. Doing all those raids to just get this like infinite helper support is just not worth it. Like I don't know what raids everybody's doing, but if you've committed and gotten this character and you're still struggling to hit 50 without him, and you're doing like this leash, like I'm trying to go for leaderboard thing with this character, you're just wasting your goddamn time. These raids are L. When we get these raids, it's just the biggest L you can take. Goku doesn't do any damage. You do all these raids to get a character that does no damage, no damage, no damage. These are hills, but no damage. You might as well use Krillin or fodder these. That's like the only redeeming thing. He does more damage than the rest of them, but it's not great. I think after Ghoul it scales off. If you're evolving any of these characters, like you just like holding else. That's just the bottom line. His stun has diminishing returns and it negates all other crowd controls you do. For people that do not know how crowd control works in this game, if you hit something with a crowd control, you can't do it again. So when he stuns everything for a half of a second as support with his low par damage, and you have to get the Ant Kingdom to get him, you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot because that half second stun does not make a difference when you're actually crowd controlling stuff. You need things to be under crowd control for a solid second to make up for poor stats. Like for instance, if we were to go up an entire tier, Pain, who pushes everybody back on upgrade 4, pushes them back like a huge margin, which probably gives you 3 whole seconds of time to hit the enemies or even crowd control them with something else by the time they get to Pain again. I think it's like a 5 second uh, window, so Pain would have to wait to do it again. In which case, this character that hits so fast for a decent chunk of damage, this you're not doing CC. He's your DPS, and his DPS is poor. Chairman, it's the same thing. His DPS is pretty poor with a cone and uh, awkward what is it called? Attack speed. Avery doesn't even get to his spike until you're on like upgrade 10. Ito is basically the only reason why this character is even talked about anymore and isn't like completely fallen out is because of Namek Infinites, because you can like scale it off kills and they're actually weak enough for you to get to higher numbers. But we're in the state where these higher numbers that she reaches, other units just get there. So waste of time. These two are fire units. Like it would make me want to put them in bad, but you would have to do a lot of Muzen train raids, and then this for this situation, if this is your guy at Ghoul, you might as well just leave him as a standard fire unit and not evolve him and waste the fruits. Where this is just like a lot of work, but he'll do way more damage than him. Like scale to scale, he is a full circle. He is a line, but he'll do like 9,000 plus burn. Broly sucks. He's one of the first units that came out or whatever. So him with all the buffs that he's gotten is just not enough with the full AOE. And then this character has a support move, but when have you ever seen somebody use this character? Like it's just you get this guy, the shop robbed you. All right, now do like pretty nice stuff, but I can't gas it up more than some of the crap that you'll just actually need for the game. Because once you get to the point where your teams are actually built, you won't need stupid stuff like this. So if you get these units and you are a noob, you will get far in the story. I'd say once you get to Hollow to between Hollow and Gojo, or not Hollow and the JoJo map, you'll actually start seeing some problems even with these stronger legendaries. But these aren't L's for ever. They're W's at the beginning and then they become L's. The redeeming quality with this guy is he evolves into a unit that I don't see here. It's It's legendary or it's mythic. Gojo or not? Yeah, yeah. No, not Gojo. Gone. I don't even see him here. I need to move him along with the list. But Gon's a hybrid. He's not terrific, but if you get 10 of those, which even outs on itself, it's not bad. Juvie will get you insanely far with her 4,000 damage and some change with a very great attack speed. Kaneki is worse, honestly. Probably here. Uh, Grimjaw is worse. He's probably more closer to above him. These all serve the same purpose. Like they're all just like they do great damage for legendaries. I believe he has a CC. He can get you pretty far too. And then Shanks doing all this work for this like 5 second stun isn't worth it. Like you're better off just having any of the other persons in this tier to do that kind of work for you, or just better yet, some of these legendaries later on without committing to too many. You get them. If you get any of these mythics, sure, but if you see them in shop, like just avoid it. This character's you have to do way too much stuff with RNG to even get this in as relevant stats as everybody else. These All Might's arguably better, honestly, because you don't have to wait till Marineford to do it, but they both suck. Even after the buffs, I think even if you go unique, it's only 50k, which some units that do the same thing later on hit for more than that. Noelle's in a situation where she's a water magic. Um, and the problem with her is you do have to get all the way to Black Clover to get this like water magic character, which you can kind of do the same thing with like Juvie as a legendary to add on damage, and you'll be matching this Noelle Valkyrie. I'm not saying that Juvie and her do the same amount of damage, but since water isn't like an overabundant thing with magic that you'll need for it, like I can put her higher for that leash, like I did for Bang. But the problem then becomes if I'm ranking characters on being the absolute best in their respective category, then Noelle gets overplaced just because of like these few portals that demand you to go type to type. When you have to do a lot of work with the magic stones and legendary stages to get her. Speaking of magic stones to get a character, here's Julius. People were wondering like, why do I have him as bad? Well, he costs a lot, so you're only gonna really use him in an infinite. And if you do happen to use him in a regular game for his buff, this damage is not going to be as relevant as people are going to want to lead on. Especially since you have to get him in special shop and go all the way to. Here's the things right here. You have to get the Endless Tome. Light Magic. Decent start, but it's 10,000. They get 22, which I believe there's another light DPS. That's probably limited, honestly. That can do this kind of damage, and then you have the cooldown, which is the clock. Feel free to pour the definition of these clocks, but these numbers will never be in a regular game. Like even if you upgrade this one Julius to 100,000, you'll be doing it for this specific portal that you're doing, which is again the same reason why I ranked Noelle so low. Or the infinite, and it's kind of like this situation where you only have like 2 more stages to do after that, and if you pocketed Julius and been holding him this time to get him to that level so that he could aid your team. Yes, I know I mentioned the ability and I said go ahead you guys and explain what the ability does so they can see it on the screen since the wiki's not going to show it. If you go through all these hoops and hurdles to get this character that's already expensive, you're not dropping him anytime soon. You're going to have to farm your ass off to even put him down. You're basically given a character that's going to make Oh, I've already done that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. I thought they changed it, which is why you guys were kind of like strong arming on this. Yeah. The reversal thing isn't as great as people think it is. I've used this ability. It reverses everybody, I believe, for like 10 seconds. Yeah, yeah. So it's basically like this ability on steroids, but in order to get something like this for that steep price, you do have to do all those hoops and hurdles. And it doesn't make or break waves usually. It's already decided if you've won it or not. That's a big commitment just for this like very leash ability. Okay, I'm not gonna argue with Gamma all day on this. Okay, Yami, same thing. You have to go through all the stages in Black Clover just to evolve a ground dark, which we already have two better ones later down the line. Um, yeah, that's what I said, Gamma, and you argued with me. I said if you have other stuff and you leave this guy on your team like a statue until you get to this later portion just for a leash ability, it's not worth it. That's why he's bad. You can go ahead and say the absolute best scenario, a winning more scenario, so that you can gas up this unit more than you actually need it to. This is a list to that I believe is a legitimate way of saying which characters you need before the next update. You do not need Julius. He is extra baggage. Moving on, uh, he's in the same situation as Rengoku. You do all these raids just to essentially get a unit that's been power crept since like update 2. So he's just as rough. He's easier to get. So if you are having horrible luck, you can just get enough gold and join raids so that you can have like a decent unit for story. But most of the legendaries can do what he does now, but you may not ever pull them. So he's worth a look at, but more than likely you won't get him. No way. Okay, next is Meg. This tier is weird. I'll say it right now. This tier right here is filled with so much stuff that a lot of people would consider good, but I can't in good conscious say it's better than it is. So we'll start with Meg. He's actually better than Dabo with DPS, but they essentially do the same thing. They do the same thing, which is they're the fire unit of your team. And I've gone all the way to Clover with legendaries only. Dabo and Mag take care of the ice mages. They're strong enough to do that. They fulfill their role in their slot. So I say they're okay because if you're not getting some of the later stuff, which you should be aiming for, if you happen to get these guys, they do actually contribute to the team if you don't have their leash, which is to defeat ice mages. Next is Orwin and Wendy. I'm just going to group them together. Orwin can hit air. He's honestly a strong W, but I believe Wendy is now hybrid now. So they both just buff their respective types. What? I put Lulu as good support because of like I'm gonna look at it. I haven't seen it. Hold on. So essentially, if you want your physical team to be stronger, Orwin happens, and the magical, it's Wendy. They used to come up a little bit more. That they've really changed the physical special. I'd say Orwin's probably like the better of the two, but Wendy with her high attack speed, magic. There is a lot more magic right now, so I'm gonna have her a little higher, but it doesn't matter. Next is Coyote. Coyote can be evolved by Hollow. He's got great damage. It doesn't fall off, I'd say, until like One Punch. But if you do get him, it's a decent evolution. But I wouldn't be pressed if you don't get him. Same with Yuto. Crushes what is this ability? This ability that like gets rid of shields is like actually like not as great as just having a multi-hit character. So in the rare instances where there's shields in the 20s and his ability comes up, having to dedicate an entire slot and evolve him from Magic Challenge just to make it so that that one boss that you could just spam a bunch of units that like aren't upgraded to just attack the shield Makes no sense. It never made sense that this guy's attack, it destroys the shields, but he doesn't actually hurt them. I honestly don't. Well, you can evolve this guy way sooner. You have to do dungeons to evolve him. I honestly believe this guy is warranted of a rework where his attacks go through, like Celestial or something. They need to make it so that his attacks actually just hurt people through their shield. It gets rid of it, and he does his damage. And I think he would at least jump to good support or something, like a whole nother tier difference. Uniqueable, I believe, is an. I don't think he's an air actually. I think he's like typed weird. Um, Even though he throws gust of wind. Let me fact check that one because I haven't used him in a very long time. What is his element? His element is magic dark. So even though he throws gust of wind, he is a dark magical, which is nice. They're at the top. This is where there's like a lot of contention for stuff like Julius and Yuto and where they're placed. My main concern is what you need up here, but I'll get to it, Zeet. It's actually more like this. But these shouldn't even be ranked. Everybody knows you need farm. What else? Where was I? Okay, Gray is an upgraded version of basically Rukia with the freezing, but again, going through all of Magic Town to basically get a 44k tax every like 12 seconds freeze is just not worth it because what will happen is instead of this is not you're not reading the list at all. You need to tape your eyes open like you're watching Zero Village, dude, because that's not what that says. It says best ground, best air. Read the side. Everybody read the side. Trash, bad, okay, good support, good air, good ground, best support, best air, best ground. Okay, next is you're gonna do all that to get basically a unit you're gonna place for the freeze. You might as well use Rukia at that point. I don't know where she is. Oh, she's a tier above because she's a legendary. He does have more damage than her, but you have to evolve it. Like it's bad. Next is Madara. Their ranking is in order. That's why somebody said Yuto is better than Crush, and I was just like, not for my eyes. No, it isn't. Next is Madara. Madara is pretty early, quick. You can evolve Madara pretty early, and he's a fire, but they've had to buff him a couple times, and his damage is still not spectacular. Like, if you're gonna work paranoia about fire, if you don't get some of the other units later down the line, get the legendaries I mentioned earlier in this tier, or I think there'll be one more later. But yeah, he's not great. And same with Juzo. I usually rank this guy kind of high because Juzo has a 7-hit multi-hit. It is 7 to 8 hits, and he applies bleed on first to last hit. So like to simplify this, he has this move that like takes a long time, but he only has like an attack speed of like 5. So he applies bleed and multi hits past the eggs. Or actually I think it's 6. It's 6 hits. So it's 6 hits, and as long as he's hitting, the person is in an anti-heal. So he kind of like just makes it so regen units are just kind of never live. You think Madara's the best bird? Okay, well that's as hot take as the word fire. And then the last one is the JoJo character girl. Dude, her stats and everything are like a good thing in the making, but like doing legendary stages and banking on the RNG for the JoJo character disc. Yeah, I know. I was gonna say that. But going for the RNG just to get like a 33k unit is just not worth it right now. No, that's not true, Z. Okay, let's move on to the good supports. I need to actually pull this out. I don't know why Lulu is a limited, but he's the only limited I'm going to put here in case you guys get him. I don't know what his chances are in this game. Can we get this stupid ad for Fast and the Furious off my screen? This guy came out when the game released. Okay. I don't know where his ability is down here, I guess. Change attack to single? Okay, that sucks. Okay. For block information, what the heck? He's a summon unit. He summons units, but his damage is release 1, 400, ending at like 4k. And then he does do like the Gios cooldown. Here it is. Mind control on max upgrade. I'll look at the money here. Make enemies within his range walk backwards. So he's like Julius before Julius came out. Includes the boss. However, conflicts with freeze. So you can't freeze when you do this. It lasts for 5 seconds and a 40-second. So this is pretty good for a support. But you'll never get this guy. I believe the chances of getting him are like... If you think Special Shop is bad, I mean, this is a whole nother league of bad. To be real with everybody here. If you do happen to get him and do the King's Rook, though, this is a nice TC, but you'll never see him. I'd put him here. If he would be the better Julius just because you can actually place him for 2,000. But I believe Julius can do on placement, but this is about round where you'll be on this like the same instance. Next is Blackbeard. Blackbeard is a curse unit. It only buffs magic. Okay? So if your team is magic, he can hit the whole team, especially if you put it on last, the units that you're fighting. Alright, good night. And just make it so that all your magical units do 30% extra damage, which is really nice. If you just want them to help. It's not good enough for like an amazing support, but as something to pick up. He can definitely help with fights if you're trying to find somebody to like just juice your team, push your team just a little bit over. If you already have your main core doing what they need to do, he can make that main core just push further than it should. But sometimes crowd control is just better. The next one is Hisoka. Hisoka needs rank 4. Rank 4 is what Hisoka needs to start slowing people. His slow isn't like terrific, but his attack speed is good enough that where if you set him to last, that he'll like get the whole herd as slow as it would be if you did like Katakuri stuff, which is in the same tier, but Katakuri doesn't need to get to that upgrade. So if you happen to bump into him, it's even more reason not to pick up Katakuri because you can do the same thing with a legendary. You just need just slightly more costs, but I believe his damage is actually better than Katakuri's side by side. But I think Katakuri is fire, so they both have their own strengths and weaknesses side by side. Rukia is just the freeze. It's just better gray in the sense of that if you accidentally get it, you'll just have a crowd control. Like, it's just nice to have. Unfortunately, it starts at single target, so just like Hisoka, you'll have to go to rank 4 before she actually does, like, I think it's like a cone, and then ends up full AoE. Dio, I briefed up on this guy before, and Tengu at the start of this. They both, at the same upgrade, stun. His is time freeze, his is Kurt's speech. He does more damage. He has multi-hit on place, so he helps with shields. He helps with overall damage. The later the game goes, both their damage is insignificant, so Dio brings more to the table. However, if you got this dude right off gate, he'd be carrying for quite a long time, where Dio would need help by Magic Town. We already touched up on him, but he does slow bosses. And he does on placement slow, so it's a pretty devastating slow for enemies. I will say, I do not think, unless you already have a team shaped out, you should go for something like this. But it is an immediate access slow. It's only ground. Dio's hit air, but it's only ground. But it can round out some teams. And like I said, with JoJo, he's an epic. This is not the evolved one. This is the epic. For, I believe, 3,000, maybe 4. Probably 3, though. I think it's 3. You can place 3 each, and they all have a manual time stop. I think it's on a worse cooldown than Dio. It is he does multi hit for 4, but the fact that you can get this guy essentially at any point in time, no legendary pity, none of that. You can just get him. You'll have a decently statted thing that won't start struggling with damage until Marineford, but then can support you forever. I've even heard people say, because you can sell this guy to reset it, it's not a universal cooldown. It's a set cooldown per JoJo. You can actually sell him and spend the 3K again, the time freeze. Now, it is crowd control, diminishing returns, where you can't just like infinitely do it on the same guys, but it is like a situation where if you were quick enough, you could tag the whole waves and infinites or the story or whatever you're doing and just keep plopping, selling, and just freezing each section of the wave, especially if you're just the noob there that can't help. Like, you're just so trash. This can go miles over just having some actual, like, decent DPS. Like, it'll go way more for the people that actually have units on your team. Now, noob to noob, this is delaying the inevitable. But again, this is like a situation where we're talking about kind of supports here. So it'd be unfair to doctor his scaling falling off that hard when he's an epic. Ease of Actus over the damage. We'll go over airs lightly again. Sakurai buffs all your units and your base. Your base for 5% on max upgrade starts at 3. Upgrade, I'm pretty sure that she's a common. So it actually costs 600, and to even get base buffs, it's 800, 1200, 2000. And then boom, you're done. You have a unit that's just like in a wide AoE, just buffing your team and healing your base. It's good for a limited, but I won't go into it. Weather's in the same situation as the other JoJo girls that I mentioned before. He's a hybrid. He does good damage. I've even seen with Unique that he can kind of like carry games. But I think he just shows up a little bit too late and gets outscaled by a couple other things. So getting him is a W, but earning his evolution is going to be very difficult. So I don't think I don't think any of these characters are like, they're good heirs, but just like the good supports, you're better off with the better stuff. King is great because he starts ground with some decent damage for his turf, but by the time you evolve him Ant Kingdom, he'll take you as far as one punch areas. He's a hybrid, so you can put him anywhere, and he has like this. I'll actually show it on the screen as to why this character kind of like is in this weird state with money. He's definitely been power crept, but 13 for placement for 2,000 nearly. And then I'd say by the time you get to this upgrade for 1,100, this used to be impressive, but you get to 12k, and it's like a beam for 25, the Rage Blast, which is a nice chunk for kind of cheap costs. It used to be meta. Like, so getting him early, especially, and getting to that Ant Kingdom can swing your team into the end of the game if you don't happen to get any other units. Can I get back in that game, or did I get by? Okay, cool. Yuno's in a weird spot because he actually is a great wind air. Like, if you don't have, he's the only magic air, unless you count somebody later, but I don't. He's got really bad attack speed late game. So I end up with his thing, since we're getting to kind of like the tougher guys here. I end up doing this like thing where on placement, no, I do not want Coca-Cola. On placement for the 13, it's quite a barrage. It's like a barrage of hitting. So you can actually spam like 4 of him for 2,393 to have all 4 of them hit for around 10k on placement, and then you just upgrade the one to, I believe here, upgrade 4, and you just linger on it until you can do like the ability before the Zephyr. So around upgrade 6, and then you have all 4 of them hitting for 23 instead of actually committing to Zephyr. And then with your spare cash, if you go Zephyr, skip all the way to the end here for the 10-second attack speed 62. Because if you jump from 23 to 44 and nearly double your attack speed, especially since Zephyr is like not as good as the Gust, you'll be in a situation where units may get by or you won't have enough damage. Where if you just skip ahead to this from the 7 to 10, nearly tripling your damage, and then using the money that you would with the 7,000 onto another you'd get up to 10k and then still be hitting for the second, or for the 7, where this number would only go up 1,000, and then your attack speed is nearly half, and then you'd have 2 units hitting the full actual wave, no shields, no problem. However, you do have to beat Magic Town, just like it brought down the rest of these things, doing legendary stages to evolve this unit, which on evolve kind of is an anchor. It just brings him down to around the same relevancy as a unit that's been power crept to me, because there are units that just hit way harder than, what is this? 10 seconds for 62. Those will be laughable numbers soon. Uru is decent, just because of like the way his stats are. So he actually is probably one of the weakest statted mythics. He's been buffed a couple times. See, 800 on placement, which is really low. But after you get to like near end, it says 10k, but he's critting. I believe if it's not 50%, I'm not sure. Is it crit? No, it's 25%. It's a quarter, but he's only attacking every 3 seconds. So he's actually on the lower end for DPS, but since he's a hill, because we're now talking about hill, the damage difference between and him being a hollow update 3 unit compared to somebody that's like near the end of the game, which is like, I think update 8. Getting this guy early with the 8k, or not 8k, what was it? It was 8k, right? No, 10k. 10k with the potential to quit when you're only using him to... Is it actually already battle time again? No, it isn't. We won. Here, I'll do the next one. No, stop lagging. This one. I'll get you guys in. Paladin, right here. Out of my way. Okay. Getting them to these numbers when you'd want to get to this one, Ray of Light, which is a 5 seconds, 4,000. His range, I think, was his strongest attribute. It goes up to 45 for these low cost. You'll be taking out the this is physical light, so this is a unique attribute. You'll be taking out the errors that you need to take out. Ooh, treasure radar. And that's honestly what you would need from both of them, which is why his higher attack speed is kind of like a hindrance, because the few battles that the air don't really matter, unless you're going for specific things. But I'll tell you why the other ones make that inconsequential. The next one is Levi. Levi is bleed. His damage is he came out at the beginning of the game. His damage is also falling off, but you can evolve him as early as Attack on Titan. And the thing about having an air bleed is he not only gets rid of airs, but he also stops regen. And then because he attacks so fast, I think it used to be fast. It's only down to 5. See, it only says this one. Oh no, this is level 100. 17, and then the bleed for 3 ticks. So overall damage, we're at like, what's this, 3 times 12? So he's around 30k for every 5 seconds, and he can also crit, but it's 50%. But he's more of like a single target. It is an AoE, but it's incredibly small. But getting something like this, like especially early, is massive. That's your call. I don't know how desperate you are for Star Remnants. I'd say no. I've never done it, but yeah. He's a bit better than these guys because of how early access you have to him and how like down the line being a bleed as well when you only need him for a couple airs is like really strong. However, the next guy here fills a different support leash. Now they both can do like something for your team, but ice comes up a little bit more often. So Kainu being a fire as well as a unit that was more recently buffed is a bigger deal than the bleed 30k because now he's plopping down at a huge 2000 with burn that ticks also as well 3 times 7 21. So we're looking at almost 4,500 damage placement. So basically a new updated unit. He might as well be. And what he also brings to the table is this. Now I've always done this with Akainu, and just like because they have this like weird, like once they get this certain stat, their attack speed jumps up. Where is it? Range, attack speed, the meteor volcano. I actually linger them right here. I leave them right here on upgrade. Where is it? Upgrade 6, and I leave them at the 20,000. So these numbers should sound similar. The 20,000 with burn for 3 ticks, so 25. So he's hitting for around 41 every 6 seconds. If you do the same thing just like and upgrade him straight up for the 85, he'll actually, his attack speed will nearly triple, but his damage will hardly double. So you're better off waiting until you have the enough cash to jump all the way to 47 with the 14. If you even get there in most of your games. Usually you'll just sit at the 6. You'll just chill at 6 and be fine. But he is a massive unit to get because you, just like Levi, you only need to make it to Marine Ford to evolve. But he's incredible. Being a hill and fire will do a lot more for you than bleed regen. But I'm not gonna discount Levi just because Akainu got some love this update. Next, this is probably the more controversial one I'll have here, but understand this. His name is Asta is also in the same tier, so I'm not saying Ichigo is better than Asta, but I'm sure a couple of you are curious as to why Ichigo is here instead of like a best ground. My reasoning for this, and I can stand alone on this, is Ichigo's damage is actually just worse than Asta's in most game cases. So for the people that strong arm the boss thing, that's the best thing this guy has going for him is drop your whole income. Where is Ichigo? Drop your whole income on these 3 final swings. Now, eventually, and a lot of people need to know this, eventually these swings at 900 scaling, I think it is. Cooldown activate. I mean, you're just dead, I think. 900% scaling times 10. He's removed from the map after his next attack. Is this just one swing? I thought it was 3 swings. It's one attack, right? It's one attack, right? He doesn't hit that hard. He's ground. He's ground. Okay, when does he hit air? I'm getting conflicting information. I was told he was only hit air when he does the moon sky. When does he hit air? Okay, so he's hybrid, but he's listed incorrectly on their own wiki. Okay, cool. Okay, so he's a hybrid. So in that regard, he's better than Asta. In that case, however, it's easier to actually evolve this guy than Asta, so I will give him that as well. But his numbers are lower, like overall. So basically, he's only going to be better in scenarios where you have no hill and you're dumping your entire load into this final assault, which eventually his base damage, especially even now, um, will not be enough to carry you through these levels that you want to do with him. Let's just say, okay, upgrade 6,500. Thank you. I knew it wasn't right away. Here, to the AoE line, this is what he was talking about. So he actually sits at a yucky AoE circle, 4K, nearly. Jumps to 6,000 on this. It's still less than Asta's. This is even less. Asta at this point in his upgrade tree would be at 13K. Just for perspective here. I don't even think. And then he'd be multi hitting. And then on his this upgrade here, he's still not above him. And then finally at this point, he's above Asta. But then Asta's at like now he's at. This is the upgrade one, I think he said. The upgrade 6,500. So it's way down here for 25, and then this is where Asta falls off. In comparison to the late game when he gets to hybrid, Asta doesn't do as much, but in the earlier games, Asta's hitting for 4,200, I think. Here, we can just pull it side by side. I won't put a rope over your guys' head. Where's Asta? Stop at top right. Dark Asta. That's right. It starts with a D. 4,486. I think the range. We're not going to go into the small ranges. For 16 to 2,000, 9,000 damage, and then for the next set, we're nearly at 13, and then 6,000. I think nearly here we were only at 1,100. And then 2155, and I think the Black Meteor is the multi-hit, really high damaging move, and if you spike these last two in place 4, you're not doing the Black Hurricane for 53, where the Ichigo, you would actually want to commit to those last couple things so that you could so that you could do this final assault of 45 plus the 10 times multiplayer. But if he only attacks once, you better one-shot the boss. Like, I do think this eventually will. I don't. I even think this always one-shots anymore. I'd have to do the calcs, but I'm pretty sure. If this is only 10 times, does it only do 400,000? And you just pop 4? Is that what you guys do? Is that the strat? Okay, well, it says 900 times 10. So what does it actually do when you're using this unit? How much damage extra does he actually do? I'll wait for a second. Is it actually only 400? It depends. Okay, well, okay, we won't gas this down. He's not a low tier. I'm just saying that, like, the pros and cons of what he does for your team compared to something that's also of the same tier. It's not as crazy as a difference as people think. Because I think Asta does a lot more for your squad, where this guy is your end game plan. But honestly, banking on a character like this to end the boss is a little bit of like I think eventually people are gonna have to start doing math. And then Nabara is what Levi is, but there's no crit chance. She's a legendary, so it's easier to get. Yeah. She's a legendary, so she's easier to get. but she does do the anti-heal, and she costs like nothing to get it off. I think it's 4,000, but just like with Uru, you don't need that much to kill heirs. We're not talking about in-game portals. We're just talking about in general what you can bring to the table with some of these units if you grab them. We'll move on to ground now. This is just Blackbeard but stronger. You only need to get like I think four Willy Wonka tickets, I think, and then like a coat, and then he's done. So he takes nothing to evolve. I evolved him, I think, like day one of that update. Like it was so fast, and he gets up to like 40,000, and his curse does work on himself. So I think it's the same for Blackbeard, but Blackbeard has like no damage. So this guy can actually make his next subset of attacks go from 4,000 to 60 or 40,000 to 60,000, which is kind of huge that he just basically makes himself hit in an attack chain of 140,000 once you get the cycle going, which is incredible, especially if you're running an all magic team and you're not worried about physicals and stuff. I again, these are not units I don't think you should go for, but these are decent characters that if you get, these are the pros. Natsu's the magic fire. I think Madara is too. I think Madara is the other magic fire, and Natsu just outclasses him despite the buffs. He's really cheap. He does these fire things, and you don't even need to get into the cone. Like for instance, when I got Natsu and I was using him for story in Magic Town, he could actually solo Magic Town. Aside from a few heirs, unevolved level 1. So he does a lot of work in that area. And then eventually, when you get him to the actual fire stance, when you're getting into the black clover turf and you're just upgrading a bunch of these, you have no worries about ice ever. Which I can't say the same about Madara. You're probably fine with all the scaling increases, but I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Natsu makes that free. The issues he has is he's fallen. He keeps falling, and there's somebody that's better than him, but he is the best magical fire aside from limiteds and stuff. The next thing is Pito. Pito's only this high because, if if there's no mythicals, unless you want to count dismemberment, this is the strongest ground bleed we have in the game, and it's Ant Kingdom level stuff. I think Juzo actually does like a little bit better of an attack chain, but because this Pito actually does damage, it's a little bit better for your team overall because usually it's not a full game of regens you're dealing with. It's like one or two guys, and even if it is a full game of it, it's the boss that you're hitting. So shields aren't the problem with regen. It would be regen is the full problem, or shields are. So Juzo's leash is actually not as good as it could be. Like potentially could be. Next is Kenpachi. I looked into him. It said physical light, I believe. He's the strongest physical light that's not limited if there is one in there. And I gotta say, Teddy Bear, these are some pretty nice stats. Like, I hate to gas him up after just ripping down Ichigo, but for the only physical light, where is it? K. I don't see it, K. I can't believe this tier list doesn't have Gone in it. Here's his stats. No, I do not want a Coke. He gets up to 77. The attack speed's rough, but placement, damage, ground, AoE cone, kind of rough there. I heard he stuns. He only could do 4, but 13 to 15. These are still lower than Asta. I don't know why Asta's stood the test of time with that, but if you do need this ground light damage, he's the one you want to lean on. And since his stats haven't been power crept yet, I'd say he's your guy. And I actually do see him in the shop on the side at least. He goes full AoE, but it's not too amazing, just like the rest of them. But he does do what he does best. And then just move on. JoJo's a little bit under Asta, despite coming out later, just because you're at the mercy of RNG disc. Like, look at this mess over here. 3 blue, green, orange, pink. Like, Jesus. And starfruits. To get lower stats than Asta. But Asta, you have to do the stages. He's only pure physical, so you don't have, like, that darkness buff on certain stages. But he gets up to 200,000, and I believe he has a time stop. I don't know how it really works, but I believe he does have it. It might be like an automatic thing. I I guess his scaling gets a little bit better than his eventually, but yeah. Come on, did I outsource? If you get him and do the RNG on it, just like Asa, you'll be chilling with ground. Yeah. I believe you. I don't think it's worth all the effort since there's like other characters that you can put a little bit more effort and have more control of the RNG and just have a better time. Like Asta. Like I think Asta's better for that, even though there's an RNG drop with his legendary stages, but since all legendary stages got nerfed, it's not as a pain in the ass to do his thing anymore. It's probably better with the Kenpachi and Ichigo in this regard. That if you get these guys, even though Asta's more of the time in the shop, doing these legendary stages to get them up is easier. Next is Sukuna. Sukuna used to be like a bad, or like when I say bad, I mean like good. He used to be like that guy just because he came out in a time where a lot of units were starting to get like really lame to evolve, like Gojo and stuff like that. Like when all you had to do was get a couple fingers to evolve this guy, and then we got the mess that is Black Clover and JoJo. It was almost better to just chill with Sukuna and his dismemberment buff. He's still easy to get, so that's why I put him above the rest of them, because all you have to do is really sit in the Cursed Academy Infinite, and I'm going to be saying this for another character. There's a good reason to even sit in there, so I'm going to have him above just because you'll probably be sitting there if you're going to farm one of the later best support characters or whatever. And then the last good ground is Bang. He's higher than these guys because of like the same reason as why Kenpachi's here, even though Kenpachi's stats are a little bit subpar compared to these two. Bang only needs you to do the One Punch Man portals, which if you've made it that far, especially if you're doing group cheese, which everybody's trying to do portals to get Boros as of right now, you'll be able to evolve this guy kind of quick, and he sits at everyone said he was mid, but I don't know. He doesn't have many upgrades. Where is Bang? Where's this ugly motherfucker? Bang bang bang. Isn't it B? B. What? Only Brook? Where's Bang? Okay, I don't see Bang, but I have one. He's pretty good. He's a water ground. He's literally better than Noel. Is he called something else? I thought this guy was called Bang. Okay. Anyway. Go to new units. Oh, he's not in here. He's in new units. Okay, cool. If you go to Bang, I have one of these. These are one of the first one I evolved, and people were like, he's trash. Placement 5,500. Like, that's already better than like every character I talked about already. Yes, that's his actual placement damage, and he was called mid. And on first upgrade, he already goes to 11. So he's already like outscaling like almost every character I've already said that took like 4 to 5, debatably. And once he gets to the end, it's 45. So he scales down by here. But if you're bringing him to the table, you're probably just using him for these bigger bursts here. And then it's diminishing turns here. So if you are using them, you're using them as your water ground unit that starts off strong and then ends off like basically Ichigo stats without the end game there, but he's just easy to get. So like good like the rest of them. No utilities outside of water physical, but he starts off the strongest of all of them for nothing. So you could plop down 4 of these for 10k and have them all hit for around what is it? Since they're all doing 11, around 51 or 54, I think. Or not 54, 44, which is pretty strong for a ground. Where if you contributed the same amount of money, they'd be doing less. It's marginal numbers that will hardly come up, but especially since he's the only water, and the ease of access of evolving it, it's pretty nice. Next, we're going to go to the best. These are the units that actually matter. So if you were watching the video to see which are the best units, this is it. This is all I have to say about most of these units. I'm not going to talk about farm. I'm not going to argue with people about who's better. All right. Speedcart has better situations with shorter matches, which you can sell by the end of the wave or whatever, or the last wave. But Boma has bigger money girth, and with the units becoming more and more expensive, sometimes Boma's better, and sometimes Speedcart can do it. They're both good. If you have either one, you're fine. All right. Now for the Dream Team, all these units bring incredible damage to the table, and you could argue Cell being at good air, but the one thing that all these have in common, except for Gojo, is you can't, and I'll say this a couple times, you can't guarantee you'll get them. The problem with most of the units nowadays is you have to rely on the special shop, and I'm not going to beat everybody over the head with the special shop, but if you do the long ass cell grind, especially if you've picked up most of the heirs or group up with the people, you're sitting with a guy that with the similar money that you were spending to spike up a lot of other characters will hit at a consistent 27k and a starting placement damage of around 4,000 depending on traits. He is the only other physical hill unit besides Solfay, which I say Solfay's better just because if you do hit the shop and get her, if her damage is actually better and she has the element wind, it's better to get her over Cell. I think at one point in time, Cell was the better call, especially since the raid came out before the Bleach update, so you should have had Cell. But at this point in time, it's just better to have. Yeah. But if you're gonna go either way, you could move Cell down because of those situations. But if this ground unit never shows up in shop, you might actually do the raids long enough to get your physical air with Cell, but it will take a while. Like, it will take as long as some of the other meta units I'm going to talk about. So let's start with supports. I just want to get these two out of the way because of like their similarities, and these two because of the same thing. Gojo is a pain in the ass to evolve. You can get them. It's standard though, so it's kind of like what do you get for this pain in the ass? And it's a map time freeze. Like, you just freeze the whole map, and it's a low cooldown. Now, his scaling has fallen off, but if you do grind him, you have an on-placement full map CC that can, like, stun the whole map multiple times in the same wave. So he can actually just dictate games on his own. Like, if somebody brings him, you might win games that otherwise would have been a loss. There's only one, like, if one player does it, it's a like, all the Gojos can't freeze, so it's not like you can exploit it with JoJo, but it's a pretty nice plop down. And he does buff himself by 100%, just like Ichigo does. It says 100, but it might be different scaling. Um, so his attacks can get pretty high to the 100,000s instead of where it's at. Because his start, I think his like highest scaling only goes to like 50k. You can keep going with limits, but since it's like a 15k cost every limit, and you're only getting 5,000 extra damage, you're just better off just getting the original 6 highs and leaving it at that. But that's a powerful CC. The next one, she's technically a hybrid because I think Tornado Kick hits air. Is Takasuma or whatever her name is. She knocks everybody back, so she's just better All Might and Whitebeard. Like she's and Pain. Like she's just way better. You do have to wait till One Punch Man, but placement stats for every single One Punch Man, including Bang in his unevolved form, regular Bang, their stats just in base are just kind of high. This is level 100 unevolved Bang, almost 4,000, and all of the One Punch characters are like that. Where unevolved, their stats are just incredibly high. So you have no reason not to pick them up over any of these other units, no matter how much I try to gas up all these other units. Unevolved, like King for example, are just not usable. Like they're anchors until you do the work to make them, including Poochie. But we'll get to him after I'm done with her. Her being able to do that much damage, hit ground and air, and push everybody back is just incredible to have. Like your whole team should honestly just look like One Punch characters, aside from maybe Soul Fei or Soul or Cell. And but if you had to go with either or, Gojo, but she's easier to get, so I would snipe her with the shop. But Gojo is standard, so it's really like a 50-50 on it, but she is incredibly strong. I try to fit her on my team from time to time, but when we get to like some of the best like actual DPS in this game, I'll explain why exactly I don't overcommit to this CC. Next is Poochie, and Poochie is so annoying to evolve, and his ground placement damage is at a pitiful 2,000. But he is a support, so supports aren't even supposed to have that much damage. When you get him to his like 17k upgrade though, cutting the entire map, allies, you bring your boys in, everybody's attack speed gets cut in half for probably a solid 10 seconds. That's insane, especially since it doesn't like work against traits, which normally if you trait your units, if you did like Godspeed or Nimble or something like that, depending on how fast the unit already was, it would just take away less. So, like with earlier with the 15 seconds per attack, if I had Nimble or something on him, it would drop it from like 15 to 13. Where if I had the same Nimble on like somebody that attacks fast, like Poochie, who already attacks in almost like 4 seconds, it would drop it from like 4 to like 3.9. Where his ability, let's say he's at the 4, he would be cut in half to 2, irregardless of like diminishing returns on those traits. So having him, you do have to, if you're doing these matches, you do have to be the guy though. So like in a story mode, you would need a hill that can make up for the flyers that are getting by without having to upgrade them. Because when you go for this accelerator, you're committing to it. You can't give him a little bit of money and then he does that like Gojo where you're just plopping him down. So in this scenario that I'm painting for you for crowd control or everything, Gojo would be holding it down with his CC until the late game CC comes out, and then your actual damage that you spent the rest of your money on, which shouldn't be too much since they're meta, carries the real game. So speaking of meta DPS, let's start with the air with this support. Aizen's incredible. I do want to say that Aizen's incredible. I did glance at his stats. I'm just gonna pull them up really quick as I multitask this stupid dungeon or whatever it is. No. Back to Mythics. Eisen Final. We're only going to talk about Final, not Fusion. I don't want to talk about it. Placement 4,000. Amazing. And then I've been told it's upgrade. I don't know which upgrade it is. One of these upgrades turns him into a hybrid. So it's either this one, Soul or Will, or it's full incarnation. And these stats are just like already better than something like Asta. He's a magic, so it's a really magic heavy meta, which is why I kind of like bumped up Cell and really talked about the ground physicals. His eventual damage though, if you can even make these purchases, is a 220,000. So if you do commit to this guy, he will like carry any game you're in. Speaking of that, this is supposed to be you. 15k one. Okay, so he doesn't become hybrid till here. So yeah, he isn't the one you should be banking your air on. He would be the one. I'd say Eisen would be a build that you run if you're not going to use, if you're not going to use Poochie. So if you're doing an Eisen build team, I would suggest that you fish for the chick or Gojo with him, and then just like another hill with whatever you need with fire and stuff, and just not and then have like one of these other guys with them, where if you are banking on your hills to do the main damage with your other ground units, Poochie's to play there. It's like a bit confusing, so I'll just finish up with the guys and tell you guys like what core builds and which supports you bring to what fights, and it's just guaranteed success every single time. So we'll just say his damage is stupid for now, okay? Then we can go on to Metal Knight, which is the other stupid damage one. And the reason why I have him like a little bit of an edge over him, over Eisen, is because, again, unevolved, you have to do a journey with Eisen to evolve him, if you haven't noticed how many Eisens are here. However, with Metal Knight, unevolved, level 100 stats, it's not worth talking about scaling up. It's 4,000 into 13 or whatever, which these stats look like the evolved version, but they're not. This is the evolved version. Oh my god. If this site wasn't trying to throw ads at me, maybe it could run properly. This is ridiculous. Okay, anyway. 51. 51, 11 to 17 for most costs that ground units that I was just debating with you guys about would kill to have at those lower upgrades. So he actually, as your hill, could just be your main sources of damage, which is why I was talking about Poochie earlier. And he hits both, as Zeet said before, wouldn't air just outclass ground because it hits both. That sometimes works good and against you, but essentially you can get this guy to his upgrade. I believe it's this upgrade right here, the rocket upgrade, and then stop upgrading him. You can only place 2, which is the con, but then you have 2 guys hitting for around, or they're both doing 10,000, but he comes with a drone that hits for like, it says 25% of his damage, so it's usually sitting around like a solid 20,000 or something like that. It's solid. It's definitely good. Or broken or whatever. The drone is single target. But if you get these 2 up like that, which you can get like 2 of these solid, but you can't do the Poochie Heaven thing. So you could just go 1 of him, 1 Poochie Heaven, and with just him and Poochie alone, you should just solo most things. I think it does. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. So your main core could just revolve around this guy who's only supposed to do 1 leash as of right now. But then let's finish with the actual 2 strongest ground in the game right now. Sonic Speed with a 50% crit rate at like 60k damage, and with like very few upgrades, and then Geno who goes up to 80k with ticks of burn every like I think it's 7 seconds for him. Um, these guys kind of just deal with like everything you need to do. Genos does the fire because he's a fire unit. I haven't said that since Akainu. And Sonic's just the better ground. But since you'll need fire for like ice and stuff, you realistically could just bank it with these two. You get Metal Knight in the shop and Genos in the shop, and you actually don't need all this other extra bullshit. You just make it to the final level, and then you could just grab the rest of the supports however you want to shape up your team. So like if you're just trying to catch up, like at the beginning of the video, like I said, so you're ready for this Naruto update or whatever it is. As long as you have these two guys, all these extra dudes are just gonna make your team incredibly fat and ready. But the realistic thing is Boma, and if you want to double farm on this one, Boma, Genos, Metal Knight, especially for a new fresh account, you're done. However, if you boost your account past this, you'll go Noob to Pro. These other things can just make it so that you guaranteed get them. So like Cell, for instance, is a raid. For every 500 gold, each raid will reward you, because this is scaled back way before we had these powerful units, 200 gems a raid. So you could work towards getting him, and you'll have a ground physical for situations that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do with a magical Metal Knight. And then if you go for Aizen, since these other guys can kind of like anchor you away, you can go back for standard shop, pick up old Aizen, and just grind for this guy in the newly nerfed Aizen stages. And then any other extra help with mythics that you snipe, whether it be one of these three, him for extra ground, you'll just be able to carry yourself like none of this stuff is even happening. That's why if you're a new player, or even if you've been in the game, all these other units, unless you're doing a specific portal, are irrelevant. It's only these units you should be leaning on all the time. Any other times that you're banking on stuff like Sakura or any of these other things, you're doing to benefit the main core of these guys. These guys, to me, are the meta.